Thank you. Well, thank you for coming. Welcome to this session on public data stories. My name is Florian, and I'm here with Johnny Walker, the famous Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker, the data artist, not Johnny Walker from Bourbon Street. We're both on the Tableau public team. Johnny based out of the UK. I'm from Germany, and as part of our role on the Tableau public team, we have the great fortune of working with lots of great organizations and help them with their public data stories and with publishing visits to the web. What that means, I think we thought it'd be best to just go straight into an example. We had the pleasure of working with a really cool organization recently. It's Johnny who did all the heavy lifting, so I'll let him show you that viz and talk you through that example.
Okay, so Seattle. This is Tableau's home city. And there's a massive, massive problem with homelessness in Seattle. And if anybody's heard of them, I'm sure some of you have heard of Pearl Jam. So yeah, this band, this viz here, kind of encapsulates, the wrong word. But this viz is about what we're talking about today. It's about how the band has used Tableau to tell a story and embed it in their web page. And we'll go through that story now. Just got to switch the thing. So this is their web page. So homelessness, a massive issue. The band itself got together to do some shows called the Home Shows. And it's an incredible movement, an incredible partnership that's been created to try and fight homelessness. And so here we are on the Pearl Jam website. And the viz is showing the amount of money that's been donated so far, nearly $11 million, 4,500 donors. And it shows the partners and supporters, and even the Tableau Foundation is in here somewhere. And it's showing some of the TuneSpeak donors over time, and the CrowdRise donors, and then it also shows the restaurant partners here. And this is the kind of information they wanted to show on this visualization. They also wanted to show who the beneficiaries are. And in this particular case, we wanted to match the whole branding of the visualization with the rest of the website. So we just took inspiration from their logo. And in this case, we can hover over the different beneficiaries. So these are all the organizations that are helping out with this $11 million. It's absolutely incredible movement that's being created. So we can click on those, and it'll take us through to the website, and you can find out more about all the beneficiaries and the amazing work that's being done through this $11 million. They also wanted to look at the Twitter conversations. So we got the hashtag, the home shows, and we scraped the data using Python and then fed it into Tableau eventually. And this is all the tweets that they've got using that hashtag. We've got Bill Gates here and the Gates Foundation, and then Pearl Jam itself, and then the Seattle Seahawks and the Seattle Police Department. And you can go in there and you can search your Twitter handle and find out who you are and what difference you made just through the visualization there. The next thing we wanted to do was tell some stories. So from their neighbors, these are people in Seattle who've been affected by homelessness and some other organizations that are helping out with homelessness. And so we decided, right, they wanted to show some videos. They had some, in this case, 6 YouTube videos. So we wanted to try and help them sort of, you could have embedded them in the website itself, but they really wanted to tell the story and use video to bring the message home, make it real. This is real people, a real problem in the world. So in this case, when you click on the little icon button here, it'll take you through to YouTube, and you'll be able to find out all about that particular story. So this is kind of the visualization that we've been working with them, and it kind of encapsulates the whole sort of idea of what we're doing in this sort of talk. It's about the kind of data that they've used. This sits on Tableau Public, so it's publicly available data, but it's telling a real PR story, really. It's sort of pushing home that message. And any business and organization could do that.
Yeah, and it's a multimedia campaign, really, if you want to. They're trying to get attention for that great cause. Obviously, the charity gigs are at the heart of it all, but there's a YouTube channel, as Johnny mentioned. There's a website, there's social media activity, and there's a nice little data visualization. And we see that more and more now that organizations are using interactive vizzes to get people to engage them in a story, to be part of the conversation. Content marketing is the buzzword. And yeah, so lots of different organizations, not only charities, not only rock bands, but also private sector, public sector, international organizations. And we'll see a couple of examples today. Now, the way they do that is that they, switch me back. They publish their visits to Tableau Public, and then from there, they're embedded in the website, just as we've seen here. So you go publish your viz to Tableau Public, grab the embed code, put it in the website, 2 clicks, and it's live. The step before, though, is obviously you need to build your viz, and you do that in Tableau Desktop, the tool we all love, the tool we all know. And you can do that either using the free public edition, which is meant for just publishing to Tableau Public, or you can use the professional edition, which comes with your creator license. So if you have Tableau Desktop on your laptop, you can get started with it straight away. But let's be honest, a viz that lives on a website for the whole world to see, it has to look a little bit different. It has to be a little bit more polished than your average KPI dashboard that you might share with your colleagues. So today we want to look at some of those design decisions that might go into a viz like the Pearl Jam viz, but also some simpler vizzes, because it's not really difficult. It just takes a couple of things that you need to think about. And we've broken them up into 4 different categories to make it easy for you. And we want to talk about those 4 different things.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at the kind of content and the kind of message you might be able to tell, remembering that you are publishing to Tableau Public. Form factor, mobile design, really important for visualizations these days. And then some interactivity tips and user experience. And then at the end, we're going to look at some sort of formatting and branding tips as well. So during the presentation, you're going to see some key takeaway slides where there's design considerations and real-world examples, and some project management tips as well, and then some Tableau tips as well. So you'll see those throughout the presentation. It will be available to download, so you'll be able to see those at the end.
Yeah, there's a little cheat sheet for each section, so when you get into the office on Monday, you can get started with it straight away.
So the idea behind the content and message is something that you kind of really need to think about. And we know a lot of businesses don't want to publish to Tableau Public. They might not be able to. It might be sit behind a firewall. However, there's always an opportunity. Data can be created, particularly for something like any of these kind of things. So social media campaigns or PR opportunities, content marketing. You might have some open data, some annual reports, or some statutory reporting. Those kind of things, it's something that you can create in a way that you will be able to publish to the web. So this is one of the first real-world examples. This is Boeing Airlines, a Seattle-based company. They've created this incredible, it's their annual report. They do this every year. They publish it up to Tableau Public and embed it on their website. Sorry, that's my fault. Not that way. I didn't realize that. So we'll take a look at the viz here. So this sits right in the middle of their web page. As you can see, and it's sort of beautifully branded, fits in with the colours and the themes of their corporate design. In this case, they've used the story points, the Tableau story points, so these sort of kind of tabs across the front. And there's an incredible amount of visualization types in this visualization. In fact, one of them is actually in the Tableau Public Viz Gallery, if you saw that, near Hall G. So you've probably seen that, that'll be out there, where they're using Sankeys and all sorts of things. But this kind of dashboard with the story points along the top, there's a lot of information in there. It's a huge thing, loads of chart types, loads of information, and you've got to get through all those tabs and be really interested to find out some of the key findings. So one of the most amazing things is up here where we're looking at China and how the global traffic is going to grow by 3.3 times by 2037, and that's going to outgrow the whole of North America and Europe combined. Amazing insight, brilliant, fantastic. But that's one kind of dashboard that's out there, published onto their website. Another example here is, this is from the Hatch Institute, and this is just a single chart. And it's probably sort of what most companies do in sort of reporting. It's the sort of standard thing. You'll have some text, and then a single chart, and then maybe some more text, and then another single chart. But the beauty of Tableau is, of course, is you can embed those single charts into your report however you may wish. It's something that we're seeing a lot more of, actually.
Yeah. You should show it on the website.
Yeah,
so
Florian will
show the live.
bring that up.
That's why we had problems earlier. We wanted to actually bring all these visits up live. I want to show you these are real examples. Put them up in the browser. And this is a different type of viz from the Boeing viz. It's just one single chart, and it tells a story. I mean, what it does is so the Hatch Institute, they're supporting independent journalists with their research projects. And they did this really big project where they send out freedom of information requests to public, what do you call them, agencies like ministries and state level agencies. So all over the US, they collected all that data, asked them, how much do you pay your workers? And what they did here was they ranked all these different departments by how much they pay, so better paying over here, the ones that don't pay so well over there. And then on the vertical axis, we get two dots, one for the men and one for the women. And what they found after that really long research project is that unfortunately, there's a pay gap there in the public sector in the US. Men get paid a lot more than the women. And that's the story they're telling, and that's reinforced with this chart. You can see it immediately. You see those two different lines and those two different colors. And that's really the point of this viz. It's just to tell that story. So what we can do is we can place them on a spectrum. You might have heard this before. Some of them are more for exploration, for providing information, and some of them are more explanatory. They tell a story. They communicate insights. And most vizes will have components of both. So even the pay gap viz, you can explore it, and you can find your own department, and we'll get to that a bit later. But it helps to think about that because it helps you to think about how do I want to design it, how big does it need to be, how much space do I need, and we'll get to that in just a minute. What we see, though, is if you want to generate attention on social media and you want to get people to click on it, you need to try to push it as far over there as you can, right? It's not always possible because the further you go there, the more subjective it gets, the more polarizing it gets. So sometimes there are good reasons to kind of stay a bit on this side of the scale. But try, if you have a good story, try to tell it and get people interested in your viz. So these are the key takeaway points from this section. I won't go through all of them. You have them, as I said, on Monday. But one important project management tip is on that point, talk to your PR teams, talk to your social media teams, because they know how to tell a story. This is obvious, but I've seen so many analysts put together these crazy dashboards and then publish them, and then they wonder why it's kind of sad because there's so much cool information in there. Talk to people who know how to tell a story, and they'll help you with that.
Okay, so the next section, form factor and mobile design. So if we go back to the Pearl Jam viz, that kind of took the format of a long-form infographic kind of visualization. It's something that kind of fits well with regards to scrolling down a website, or if it's mobile designed, it kind of fits well within that scrolling aspect. But it's something that we are seeing kind of less of out there in the wild. The other dashboard, I know there's somebody in the audience who may have been showing this off in his talk earlier. I don't know if anybody saw Skylar from Spotify, where I think he actually reconstructed this actual visualization live for everybody, but this is Spotify. Awesome. Embedded in their website, and we kind of refer to these as kind of like mini dashboards. They're made up of, what, 1, 2, 3 charts and, you know, in a table, but awesome viz. You know, embedded there, wonderful. This one's just brilliant anyway, and Skylar will tell it better than me anyway, but this is about streaming trends of Christmas songs, so if there's anybody in the room from the Philippines over here on the left, you should not start listening to Christmas music in October. That is just wrong. But it's amazing. It's amazing that, you know, that Spotify are doing this. We love those guys. Thank you. Yep, so the next one, you'd seen it earlier on with the Boeing viz. So using story points. Again, we kind of explained earlier on, you know, you've kind of got to have a good reason for somebody to click through all these tabs. You know, people's attention spans are just dropping, and, you know, instant messaging is much quicker and probably better for getting your key messaging across. So here's some other examples with the story points, you know, so you can use them, but look at the different kind of colors and branding and using the dots and you name it. You know, you can do that in Tableau. You can brand your story however you want to brand it. The other one, this is our Tableau foundation on our website. So you might have seen in the keynote, Tableau foundation working with path and fight normal area, visualize normal area. In this case, we use tabs. So it's a bit more like what you would expect from a spreadsheet, that dirty word. Again, we've got those at the top. You can easily see them. You can go through them, have a look at the whole story that's progressing through the tabs as you go along. Now, navigation buttons. You might have just seen this in Devs on Stage, if anybody was at Devs on Stage, or it might have been mentioned in the keynote. It's a new feature coming up in 2018.3, going to be released very, very soon. And also transparency, but we'll come to that later. But navigation buttons are going to really change the way that things are done. Moving from one dashboard to the next using any kind of image that you like, and the arrows, that makes sense, back and forth, people can understand that. But that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge for telling your story. And it's just a nicer sort of little interface, a way of moving around a visualization. And again, we'll go back to the pay gap data. So single charts, really, really still very, very popular. And they are brilliant. You know, you can get your message straight across, no problem, with a single chart if it's designed well, easily embeddable in your organization's website. So, just to sum up what we've been looking at there, we were looking at the different kind of dashboards. So it was story points and tabs and navigation buttons and long-form infographics and mini dashboards and individual charts. It depends what you want, but you can do that. You can do that in Tableau. You can then publish that and embed that from Tableau Public.
Yeah, and if you just go back, what we also see is that if you go back to that spectrum that I mentioned earlier, like the more exploratory visits, they tend to be like dashboards or story point visits, and then the more explanatory, the ones with the story, that kind of tend to use individual charts or mini dashboards. That's, of course, not a hard rule, but that's what we see out there. One chart can be shared on social media so easily, and so that's kind of what we tend to see. Now, the type of organization, the type of content, the type of message you want to tell is, of course, only one consideration for what format you want to choose. The other consideration is how much space do you have. So if you look at the Pearl Jam website here, effectively that's the space we have to work in because it has to fit in here. And that's quite generous. A lot of websites nowadays, they give you this much space to work with. Right? So that kind of constrains the options that you have there as well. And an important point here is on day one of your project, go talk to your web team, ask them exactly how many pixels this is. Because I've seen it before that you start with a big dashboard and then you have to kind of cram it all in later on. So start with how much space you have, and it'd be a lot easier. Now, the space, of course, nowadays, that's actually a relative thing, because on a big screen, you have a lot of space, and on a small screen, you have very little space. So also what you want to do is think about mobile design from day one. Think about what would that look like on an iPhone or another smartphone. There are some options. The easiest one is the one on top. Just create one single small chart that fits on an iPhone, and then just live with it. And that's valid. The thing, though, is if you want to maximize the space that you have, if you want to utilize all the real estate on a bigger screen, you have to make it responsive. And we thought it'd be helpful maybe to go into the product, to open up Tableau Desktop here, and show you what we did for the Viz that Johnny was showing earlier, the program Viz. Because that's such a big infographic, but of course people will look at it on a mobile device, especially when they've heard about it on Twitter or on Facebook or elsewhere. So the first thing you might want to do is you want to get a preview. In the top left-hand corner here of your dashboard screen, you have a device preview button. So you can click on the preview button, and we get that frame out there. And so for desktops, that it fits well. But when we switch to tablet here, we now see that it would get cut off, right? We have that space kind of. And this is a standard iPad. You can choose different kinds of devices up there. So what we have to do is, and this is something we always recommend, is probably have the width change automatically. So what you can do is you can go into range, and then just say the minimum width should come down to something like 800 or 700 pixels, so that will work on any kind of iPad. And what Tableau does is it just shrinks everything down proportionally. And in most cases, that works perfectly fine. In this case, because it's a little complex and a little complicated, this layout, we actually wanted some things to stay fixed. So what we did was here, we put a layout container around these and put all of this into another layout container. And we have these blank boxes left and right. And the blank boxes, they're free to change in size. So the fixed width here is unticked, whereas the one in the middle, it's fixed. So when the whole thing shrinks, that one stays rigid, and only the margin will shrink down. It's a neat little trick you can use if you want to work with margins. But as I said, for most visits, it's fine if everything just shrinks proportionally. Now, the other thing we can do is we can look at what this would look like on a mobile phone. And you could now start to shrink it down even more. But with a complex Viz like this, it will start to look ugly at some point. And you can see those line charts, they don't even fit anymore. So what you need to do now is you need to give it a separate layout for smaller screens. So what you would do is in the device designer up here, you'd say add a phone layout. And when you do that, Tableau already suggests a new layout. And mostly what it does is everything that's horizontally aligned, it will be vertically aligned. In this case, it doesn't really work that well. For simpler dashboards, again, it's perfectly fine. For a more complex dashboard like this, you'll just have to kind of manually rearrange all your elements on a dashboard. So you're effectively building a second layout for smaller screens. And Tableau will automatically swap those out depending on how much space the Viz gets in the browser. So those are the two things you want to keep in mind. automatic or range size, and then depending on how small it gets, you might need a separate layout. Again, lots of takeaways here, and because we have lots of other real-world examples to show, we won't talk about these, but again, on Monday you can review all of that. And with that, we want to look at the interactivity, because once you've built a whiz, you also want to make sure people know how to interact with it.
Yeah, so in this particular case, we're talking about interactivity. Because so much content nowadays is kind of mobile first in terms of viewing that content, you might have to start thinking a little bit differently from your normal kind of dashboard and the particular actions that you might set on them. Things like hover don't work particularly well on any sort of kind of touch screen or iPad, etc. So there's certain things that you can do, or it's better to do. But also, it's in terms of things like the messaging, as we were saying before, in terms of secondary messages as well. So we'd kind of said before, like having a single chart with your primary message on, and that was the pay gap data viz, and you would see that. Actually, we can go into the live version. So the pay gap data, the primary message there is kind of shown in that single chart, and it's shown pretty well, you know. But then when we start to think about sort of user interaction and also activity, there's a secondary element to this visualization. Some part of it is exploratory, like we're saying on that scale of explanatory to exploratory. So in this particular case, there's a secondary message there which brings home the thing of sort of like making the data more personal and engaging the user. You know, that's the kind of thing that we want to do. So in this particular case, if you work for a particular industry, I don't know which one we were going to bring up, Florian, but you know, you could search for that, and it highlights it there. So it's an extra little secondary message on top of that primary message. And that's where the interactivity and user experience comes in. So in this case, we've got a visualization where it was sort of a search box. Before filling in that box or searching that box, you know, it's the magnifying glass. It's kind of a universal icon of searching. And the next thing there is as well is a drop-down menu. A lot of people are used to using drop-down menus, but you can never really rely on people knowing how to use Tableau. You guys might use it every day, but you sometimes need to direct people to that other secondary message or that other kind of interaction.
Yeah, and it's a great way to personalize the experience, right? Here now we're moving towards the exploratory end of the spectrum. So there's a primary message, as Johnny said, that then somebody working for this organization might be interested, well, what's the pay gap like in my organization? So you know, people might get curious, and they have that opportunity to interact with it, and you draw them into the story. So, and as Johnny said, that only works if people know where to click and what to do. So that's why we tend to advise people to keep it simple. It's super easy in Tableau to add all these filters, and it's real fun, but at the end, after you've done your analysis, probably you need to strip out most of them again and just have one or two, make it very obvious. In this case, as Johnny said, we have a search box. The problem is some of the interactivity in Tableau, which is great, we all love it. For example, dashboard actions might not be that obvious to other people. And we have an example for that. And I'm going to open it up in the browser as well, if my internet holds up. So this is, why do I have this here? So this is the UNICEF website, and they've posted this blog post about childhood pneumonia, and they have a very strong message again. So more on the explanatory side, the message is too few children with symptoms of pneumonia receive the health care that they need. They highlight those countries where it's especially bad in dark red, dark orange, a signal color. So it's for a UN organization, that's a really strong message. So great kind of primary message, but then again, you have that secondary message, that interactivity where people can personalize it, where people can look for their own country, etc. Now, initially the idea was you just click on the map, and again, this is the dashboard actions that we all love, and then you see the breakdown, the drill down by our socioeconomic group. So you see, for example, in chart, there's quite a big difference between rural and urban households, and the urban households doing a little bit better in terms of healthcare. So we know that we're Tableau fans. We know you can click on any map and something will happen. But your kind of average website visitor might not know that. So here what we did was we've put in a drop-down menu as well. And it syncs. You can see it says chart there. It syncs with the map, right? Does anybody know how to do that? Do you all know how to do that? Show it in Tableau Desktop. Yeah, I'll open it up again. So we go to Desktop. It's very simple to do. So first you set up your dashboard action. And for those of you who don't know, the easiest one is to use the filter action by just clicking this little button here. And then it will use the map as a filter, and then all the other charts at the bottom get filtered. Now what you can do is, in addition to that, you click onto your bar chart down there, go into the menu here, and then when you go to filters, the first entry will actually say action. So this is the drop-down menu that's associated with your dashboard action. And that makes it a lot easier for people who are not familiar with Tableau, because we all know drop-down menus. There's another neat trick there. Since I'm in Tableau Desktop and we're talking about interactivity and we have a map here, I just want to point out one other thing that we typically advise people to do is, namely, think about whether you need those interactive tools here, those zoom button and the search button. So in this case, actually, maybe it would have been better to not have these there, because for the primary message, you don't need that interactivity. The primary message is clear. There are some red countries on the map. Now, I know why they did it. I actually remember the conversation, because they wanted people to be able to zoom into kind of some of the smaller countries, the UN wanting to be fair to everybody. But typically, we recommend, if you don't need those buttons, don't show them. Also, lock down your map so that it doesn't move when people scroll over your page, because they want to scroll the page and suddenly they get stuck on that map and they just end up somewhere in
space.
Yeah, I don't know, somewhere.
But white space in that case.
Yeah, exactly. So what you can do is you can go to Map Options, and then what you do is you say, don't allow pan and zoom, don't show the map search, don't show the toolbar, don't show the map scale. So now it's nice and clean. Nobody gets confused. Nobody gets lost in space. So that concludes the third section on interactivity. Again, lots of key takeaways. One of the project management tips related to what we we're just saying: let others test your viz, and make sure that those people are not familiar with Tableau. Find somebody who has never used Tableau before. With that, we want to go into the fourth section, which is probably the most important section for our topic, because as we said earlier, when you want to put something on your website for the whole world to see it, it needs to look good. It needs to fit in with your website, fit in with your branding. So you probably will spend a lot of time with the formatting and the branding of your viz. And for that, I want to stay with the UNICEF viz for a little longer, because I think it's a great example of a fairly simple viz, a map, a bar chart, dashboard action. But it looks really cool, I think. It fits into that website. It matches their style. It matches their branding. And it enhances the story that they're telling in that blog post. Now, if you think about what they've done here, well, let's start with the layout. So first of all, It's a very simple sort of vertical layout stacked on top of those two charts. Makes it really easy to adapt it for mobile design because you can just squish it down a bit. They've put the map with the primary stories, the explanation up there, the exploratory bit down here. The explanation gets more space, it gets more white space, as Johnny already mentioned. There's all that white space around the different countries. That's where the eye goes. Down here, it's all kind of cramped. That's kind of where the eye does not go. To achieve that clean look, we stripped out all the borders and all the reference lines and axes and zero lines. And if you go into format lines and format borders, you just switch everything off. You get a nice clean white background. And then we added a few more lines again because we needed that 100% line to see whether how far we are away from 100%. And coincidentally, I don't think this was planned, but that kind of achieved this nice look with all these horizontal lines. And then you have that rugged shape of the continents, so that's where the interesting thing happens. Architects call this a datum. You set this, you let the eye settle, and then you have some interesting form, some interesting shape. It's just coincidental it worked out that way, but I really like that. Yeah, so that's the layout of it. It's the white space working with the padding and the margins. Obviously, you have a logo there, also very important for that branding, for that look and feel. And then they have the colors that kind of go quite well with the logo and with the corporate colors. And I'll just show you. Actually, I believe they use the kind of standard color palette that you can find in Tableau. But of course, you can also adapt it to your website's colors. One thing you could do is, if you click on a color, there's the color picker here. So with that, you can just find the color on your website, click on it, and it will save it. So let me show you color picker. You can just go anywhere, and then you can save it by dragging it over here. Even better, though, is talk to your graphic design team. Ask them what are the colors that we are allowed to use, right?
And you can sort of instantly add in the RGB or the hex code if you've got those from your corporate style guides. You can just put them straight in there. Really useful, really quick way to get that corporate look and feel.
Yeah. The other thing they did here was, because Tableau color palettes tend to always use gray for neutral numbers. And it's kind of ugly, gray on gray. So here they just used an even number of steps, and so we got rid of the gray that way. Of course, if you load in your custom color palette, you can have it without gray. There's another little trick there. The other thing is, if you look at the borders, they don't use, just zoom in there for a second, so you can set the colors, but then you can also set the borders. They don't use, they don't use these kind of dark gray lines. Instead, and again, this is where the color picker comes in, use the color of the background map. So that kind of blends in really neat. You get that clean look of the map. Just to get that sort of Zen feel. Now, the background map, of course, is also very clean. So this is another thing that you can play with. So if you go into Maps, Map Layers, you got 3 different styles: light gray, medium gray, and dark gray. But you can actually do quite a few things with that if you play around with it. So the first thing I always do is I take off the coastlines and the borders and the names, because if you add all this stuff, which often is by default switched on, it becomes more crowded, more ugly, really. And who needs to know that this is Australia? I mean, that's the one country I can find on a map with my eye closed, right? So you don't need any of that. So just untick this, untick that, and suddenly you got a nice, clean-looking map there. Yeah, that's much better, isn't it? And we have a nice slide here as well on that topic. You play with those, and if you play with the background color of your map, you can actually achieve quite a few different styles, not just light gray, medium gray, and dark gray. You can have a pink map, a dark blue map. As Johnny mentioned, transparency is coming very soon, so you can have images behind them. And so lots of things you can do with Tableau maps. They don't need to look like the one on the left. The other cool thing is in a release that's coming out fairly soon, we'll have more map options besides those gray maps. You'll get the 10 Mapbox styles that some of you might be familiar with, including the pirate map and the satellite map. So you can have those in Tableau straight away. Of course, it's already possible if you use the Mapbox integration. So if you need more advanced maps, you might want to look into having a Mapbox account as well. So those are some of the things you can do to go from a okay-looking dashboard to a neat little viz that fits right into your website and fits in there with the branding. And I believe, most of the people here should be able to do something like that on Monday. You know, if you have a nice little story to tell, 2 vizes, a map, a bar chart, think about the colors, think about the layout a bit, and voila, we're done. Now, this is an intermediate session, so we won't leave you with that. Instead, I want to go back into the Pearl Jam viz that Johnny mentioned earlier and have him talk about some of the design considerations that go into creating a more complex infographic. And yeah, hopefully some of you who might find this a little bit too easy will get some inspiration out of that. So Johnny, I'll let you talk about what went into that design for the Pearl Jam viz.
Yeah. There's a picture of an easel up there. I guess you could call it a canvas. I kind of use Tableau in a bit of a different way probably than most people. And there was a reason for that. And you really do need to start to think about design and design thinking. If you've got an important story to tell, my goodness me, yeah, you need to make it look as visually appealing as possible. You need to grab people at first. Otherwise, they may never even see your story. And I guess it comes from something that I once did for a different hobby. And there's this quote here about good visual balance and rhythm and movement and emphasis and simplicity and contrast and proportion and space and unity. This is actually one of my other hobbies, which is this quote was written for, if you take out data visualization and replace that with bonsai trees, that was exactly the same quote from a bonsai tree book. But it's exactly the same. Any type of art, any type of creative outlet, it applies. So we'll go through some of those in this next sort of section. So, first thing, inspiration. Where do you get it from? Where do I get it from? And straight away, you've got to go here. Tableau Public, the gallery. There's thousands and thousands of fantastic examples, unbelievable dashboards created by our community. These guys are doing this for free, but also on the featured section, there's a best of gallery, and there's businesses and organizations and different other themes, sports, etc. But you can take those as inspiration. There's so many, and it's even wider than that. You know, those are the ones that are in the gallery. If you use the little search box up at the top right, type something in that you're interested in. Go there, have a look. You'll definitely find some inspiration. And it's been a source of inspiration for me and many, many other people all over the world. But it kind of shows you the thing that you can do. And you might be surprised by some of them. So one of our colleagues in Seattle, her husband works for an organization. He saw a visualization on, I think it was on football, as in American football, sorry, not soccer. And the way that the data had been visualized and displayed, he looked at that and said, right, well, I can take that totally out of context. I'm not going to use it for football. That's not what my organization does. But I'm going to apply it to my I can't remember what he was trying to visualize, something to do with, it was admissions to healthcare or something along those lines. But inspiration, go and be inspired. See what you can do in Tableau. I promise you, you won't believe what's on there. It's incredible. But my original inspiration was stuff like this. I love National Geographic and the New York Times. I'll just say National Geographic a few more times because I think most of those are from the National Geographic. But I kind of sat there and thought, well, can I do this? And I was sat reading National Geographic with my brother. He was sat next to me on the sofa. And he said, well, you can create that in Tableau, from what he'd seen of it. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you could make one of those. All you've got there is different certain elements. And you can use your dashboard as a canvas. So we take one of those. I just love this anyway. It's nice. Look, in a decisive victory, Obama reshaped the electoral map. But go back to what is a dashboard. And I don't necessarily mean sort of is it an infographic or is it I don't know, like a KPI dashboard, a business reporting dashboard. I mean, what is the actual thing that sits in Tableau? It's just a canvas. It's a place to put a repository for elements. And so in Tableau, you have your objects and you have your sheets. So that could be charts or maps or tables, etc. And so if you go and have a look at this visualization again, you can do that in Tableau. All those things there, there's just a text box and then a sheet, a chart, a table, a map, another text box, again, another sheet. And you can do all that. So there's no reason why you can't do any of that at all in Tableau. And I kind of sat that back there and thought, well, that must be kind of possible to get that kind of look and feel, these amazing things that you see out there. So I decided to have a go. So these are two of my visualizations. The one on the left, it's all about black bear roadkill in Florida. Don't ask. 72 separate floating elements. So don't know if you know the difference between tiled and floating. Some of you may not and may do. We'll have a look at that in a minute. But 72 separate floating elements. Same again, they're just sheets and images and text boxes. That's all done. That's in Tableau. It's there. This is another one. I told you I was influenced by National Geographic, animals. It's pretty much all about animals, actually. But again, in this particular case, I just wanted to create this visualization here. It's a bird in London, in the UK. That's 23. It's a bit more manageable, isn't it? 23 separate floating elements. So you can kind of get that look and feel that you've seen in some of those sort of visualizations. And this is kind of where we have to start thinking about design thinking and layers and Adobe and Illustrator. And that might sound crazy, but you can do that in Tableau. So the way that I've always done it is, well, I say that, the beauty of Tableau is you can do tiled and you can do floating. I used to tile by day in all my reporting dashboards, and then I would float by night, because that's where I wanted to be a bit more creative. And so that's where, in Tableau, the item hierarchy comes in. So you start using sort of layering and putting things on top of each other, different elements. This is something I'm working on at the moment, but I wanted to, it enables me to put things where I want them exactly. And that works fine, and it's great. I love it. I love just spending too much time on stuff like this, really, but in my own time. That's my boss. But I guess, yeah, you need to take time to think about design and just to show that you can do it. And sometimes things have flow and movement and rhythm, and you might not even notice it. So I love maps. Just my favorite thing. I don't know why. I did geography at university. It must just be related to that somewhere. I love them in terms of that they have flow themselves, like a kind of movement and rhythm. On this black bear one that we showed earlier on, from the title, Florida zooms down into the visualization, and it just guides the eye down into there. It can make the eye move through a visualization or through your story that you're trying to tell. I also love charts. And so, this is not the greatest example here. I love, in this particular visualization, sometimes charts they can move the eye towards something else depending on the data itself. Or they can force the eye upwards. But think about them from a design point of view that maybe that chart is pointing to something. So in this top one, that's London and green space in London. And some of the bar charts actually point to key pieces of text. And I start to think about things like that. How the different elements of design fit together. We're talking about maps. So brilliantly, in a future release, we're going to have some much better map bases available within Tableau. But I still use Mapbox, and that's just from a design point of view again. So in this Black Bear Roadkill viz up there, I didn't want the sea to be blue. I wanted it to be white. The rest of the visualization, the background is white. So I could go into Mapbox, I could change that layer from blue to white. And that was kind of important to me. I wanted to focus on the land. There's a visualization down here. You're probably not going to see it really, but it doesn't matter. But this is New Zealand. And I wanted the sea to be the same color as the rest of the visualization, this sort of green color, olivey green, something like that. And so Mapbox gives you that extra additional option for design. I love that thing. I spend too much time in that as well. So yeah, color. Movement and rhythm. So I do, again, spend too much time thinking about these kind of things. But the thing is that when you combine all those elements together, things have natural visual flow. And sometimes that's sort of a subconscious thing. Or sometimes it's a little bit more obvious. But if you've got a text box, depending on your language, you might read from left to right and then down, or it might go up or right to left and then down. But that text is going to make your eye end up at somewhere on your visualization. And if you've got a story to tell, you might want to put something at the bottom there, a key figure or something along those lines. And again, the map just zooms down into the middle of the viz, and then this bar chart at the top left just makes the eye move towards the map, but then it also makes those little maps of Florida make you move down into the visualization this way, and the bar chart makes you go up. And I love grounding charts as well, like a visual grounding. So this is a population pyramid, but it drags the eye this way, and it grounds the eye down here, and it pushes the eye subconsciously towards this. It's a donut chart, please don't blame me for that one. So there's subconscious pushes that you can make in your visualizations. And it also like a subconscious Mobius loop. You can keep the eye flowing around a visualization, keeping people's interest in there.
So here comes the awkward point where I need to tell Johnny he's got 5 minutes left.
That's okay. Shapes libraries.
He could talk all day long.
Yeah, I could talk forever on this stuff, I'm sorry. Shapes libraries.
He will do so when you come see him at the booth downstairs, so make sure you visit him there as well.
Shapes libraries. Get some shapes. I use PNGs. I hate square boxes, can't stand them. That's why I don't tile. Floating. But you can use them. You can mask areas and create curves and arrows for annotations. And I use text boxes, text holders like Laura Ipsum, like a designer kind of would do. They have those sort of like that holding place text. Images. It can be extremely powerful. One important thing is make sure that you do have the copyright for them. That's where you should be working with your creative or content teams, etc. But it was so important on the Pearl Jam viz. We wanted to take inspiration from the image, the colors. So we used the color picker to pick out the red and the yellow, and it aligns with the rest of the corporate branding and the website branding. And this is something I'd done on, well, what a surprise, birds again, but I could take the color out of this and use it in the chart. So you've got that unity of design. And also the flow of the wing drags you down to this big ass number down here. Oh, but transparency is coming soon in Tableau Public and Tableau. Thank you. So what that's going to enable, I think this is just going to change the design way that people are going to be able to use dashboarding. Before, you'd have a bar chart here, and it would have a black box around it, and you wouldn't be able to see the data through. Now you're going to be able to do that. And if we'd had transparency at the time of the Pearl Jam, look at that, what we've done there is we've made this chart transparent, and we've put the picture of the crowd behind it, and even all the sort of filter actions, etc. And I like to call him Eddie now. I like to think that we're friends, so it's okay. Never met him. Never even talked to him. Videos, just quickly. Pearl Jam, they wanted the videos in. They have empathy. It's real people, real stories. You can use them. You can do that in Tableau. It adds a little bit of oomph and movement and colour and music and motion. Brilliant viz by Ethan. I'll find it. We'll put the link on the website. But he's using these stories about it's this awesome filmmaker that I can't remember the name of now either. I've got it on a note. But these human data stories. And what he's done is he's taken the videos and applied exactly the data to those exact stories. It's wonderful. It makes it human, makes it real. And that's fantastic for embedding anything. So, again, some key takeaways. We won't go through those because I've got less than probably 2 minutes left now. But yeah.
I think, yeah, we'll let you look at those on Monday. We hope you got some inspiration there. We hope you found some useful tips. We hope you got an idea of what a typical project might look like. What are the things you need to think about when you want to publish your visits to the web? And if you found this useful, we hope that you give us a good evaluation on the app. And if you want to hear Johnny talk some more about data visualization and all things Tableau Public, come find him downstairs at the Tableau Public table that we have near to the Viz Gallery. If you haven't seen the Viz Gallery, make sure you check out that Viz Gallery. Come talk to us there if you want. We're happy to help you with your projects, to help you get started as well. And if you have questions later on, feel free to reach out on Twitter, on email, or by any other means that you might be able to reach out to us. So thank you very much for coming, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Any questions? We have 3 minutes left. Yeah, we don't have a microphone, so I'll come over.
So for the embedded visits, are you able to tag those events to measure interactivity so that people who say visit the site and then kind of figure out if they did it all? Or
So at the moment, you pretty much can only see how many people viewed this. Yeah. But it's something we've heard before, that request, that people want to know a bit more about how people interact with it. Yeah, good question. Any other questions? Yeah, Wanda.
Yeah, so that's just created in probably PowerPoint actually. So you can, it's basically like a square white, square, a white square, and then just create a hole in the middle, make that transparent, and actually blurred the edges on some of them, I think, as well. And then you can just overlay that on top of the map that you have in your dashboard. It does lose some interactivity. You might not be able to hover over it, but that might change soon anyway with things like transparency, so it might be a bit better in the future. But you know, you'd still be able to, if you filtered, it would still show that through that window. But in that particular case, the data behind it wasn't so important with regards to being able to hover over it and find out information. The location was, so I'll make that. I'll make that as that. That's why I did it. Well, you can do. You can. So what for Tableau Public, in terms of publishing something to Tableau Public that can update automatically, you would have to go in and refresh that. It depends how you're connecting to it. There's several connection methods, but we could talk a bit more about that at another point in time if you want. But yeah, there's certain ways, and you can go through and manually refresh, or use a Google Sheet.
Well, you can do Google Sheets. It will refresh every 24 hours.
So yeah, Google Sheet is probably your best option for having that automated process.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.